It's like the air just becomes smoke all of a sudden. You might walk outside and say, this doesn't smell like here. Usually when I see a tornado form, it doesn't appear as that perfect funnel. Instead, I see this little tuft of dirt being kicked up near the ground. Eventually, that funnel starts to fill in, spin faster and faster, pulling up more dirt, and it can go from nothing to this perfect cone or perfect funnel in the course of 4 or 5 seconds.
Wow.
People in the media see the same exact tornado every single time, the crisp funnel with a high contrast background, because that looks good for newspapers, that looks good for media. However, most tornadoes don't look like that. I've been next to tornadoes that are a mile wide that I can't see because they're completely enshrouded in rain, or they're low to the ground, or there are clouds blocking them. Afterwards, it oftentimes smells like natural gas. It might smell like destroyed building materials. It's a very sobering smell afterwards. You don't forget that after you're in an area kind of decimated by a tornado. What a tornado is a really concentrated area of very intense spin and a rapid upward motion. So you have this column of air that is ascending upwards at perhaps 150 plus miles per hour sometimes, and the air is spiraling inwards at up to 300 miles per hour. So the tornado is like a microcosm of that thunderstorm updraft, but on an extremely local level. So there are two main ingredients we need to cause either a tornado or tornado-producing storms. Oftentimes we have one of these ingredients, but not both. Like Florida, for example. They have tons of thunderstorms. They have a lot of juice in the atmosphere down there, but they don't see many tornadoes. However, we go up to like Canada, for example. They have the wind dynamics, but it's oftentimes not warm enough, not juicy enough to get storms that would produce tornadoes to begin with. So you need that fine overlap, and that overlap oftentimes comes in the central United States. The Plains has 1 month, all the tornadoes are crammed into that month, and you can see them better out there, so those are the tornadoes that typically appear in the media.
Look at that, boys!
Places like Alabama, Mississippi, they have a 7-month stretch from roughly November through June, where tornadoes are possible, and they do slowly accumulate them over the course of the year, and oftentimes see more than the Plains. But because they don't occur in those big events, we kind of underestimate them down there.
Like, OMG!
We're actually seeing reduction in tornado weather over the Central Plains, with lesser in the way of large-scale outbreaks, but an uptick in tornado activity over the Deep South, so Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee. And the reason for that, we think, is that dry air over California and the West, which is becoming reinforced thanks in large part to warming associated with climate change, that dry air is pushing the boundary between dry and moist a little farther eastwards, and as a result, places that would ordinarily have seen tornadoes in the past, like Oklahoma, like Texas, that's kind of being shifted a little bit more towards like the Deep South and the Southeast. One thing we're noticing too, at least qualitatively, is an increase in tornadoes during the kind of fringe seasons on the East Coast, so during the spring or during the fall. I think it'll be several years before we really have a concrete idea of how climate change is affecting them. If you live east of the Rockies, it's a good idea to have a tornado plan. On average, we have about 10 to 12 minutes worth of warning that they put out ahead of time before a tornado touches down. Sometimes, if it's an obvious signature, we can do more. Sometimes they touch down with little to no warning.
Multi-vortice tornado on the ground!
I think one of the toughest things with that is that when the public sees something like that, it's usually the only time they're ever going to see something that incredible. So oftentimes they remain completely transfixed. They're shocked by what they see. But that's the key point. They have to get to shelter right then and there, because if you're close enough, you see that happening, odds are you're close enough that the tornado can seriously impact you. And tornadoes can move 50, 60, sometimes 70 miles per hour. It's imperative people get below ground, put as many layers between themselves and the outside world as they can, as soon as the first signs of touchdown occur.